Okay, welcome to Life on Purpose, where we explore the intersection of intention, healing, and meaning. Today's guest, Samuel Shepard, transformed from engineer to health innovator, and his journey shows how science and purpose can truly coexist. Samuel, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Brandy.
Our,
It's wonderful to be with you on this beautiful day.
yes, where are you exactly? Because
I'm
it's
in
beautiful
South
here too.
Carolina, and it is bright blue skies and about
Lucky.
72 degrees.
Yes, I
Um,
moved from the East
it's beautiful.
Coast a couple years ago, West Virginia. Um,
What part of West Virginia?
Morgantown. I lived there for 17 years.
I grew up around Wheeling, West
Did you
Virginia.
really?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. So we moved to Salt Lake City. Gosh, it was about in July, a year ago, July. And then we are in Wichita, Kansas now. So, so yeah, but it's
Excellent.
beautiful here also. Okay, so I want to touch just a little bit on your bio before we get started because we're going to talk about a lot of things today. So, you are an award-winning physicist, inventor, and engineer with 42 patents and over 50 years of breakthroughs across biochemical, environmental, and medical engineering. Your career got spans through what, NASA, Beijing Olympics, alternative energy, just to touch on a few, but we are in kind of the innovative health space now, and obviously for a very good reason. Your own pathway through cancer and healing from cancer and all of that. So we have got a lot to dig into. We have a lot to dig into. So I'm so glad you're here. I kind of want to start um, from the beginning, your career path and all of that. What were you doing with your life before all of this?
Well, I guess I could start. I was born in 1953, and in 1954, no, I won't go back that far. But graduated from Ohio University. I had undergraduate degrees in chemistry, physics, and then a bachelor's of science in chemical engineering.
Hmm.
And fresh out of college, went to work in the polymer industry. And I worked on reaction polymerization with polystyrene, polysulfone, polyethylene, polyvinyl chloride. Um, After a stint of that in, I guess, 1985, I moved to Allentown, Pennsylvania, and at the corporate level, and was actually developed the very first AI system to interpret federal regulations of transportation of hazardous materials.
No way.
Yeah,
That's
so it was,
obviously come a long way.
oh
Yes.
my golly. But even then, it was the same issues because we had seven people that worked in the company that took a year for a product to come out of product development to be marketed as a product because
Hmm.
we had to identify the product, the package, the labeling requirements, the marking requirements. So we had somebody who was specialized in air transportation.
Wow.
We had some other person that was a specialist in rail transportation, in truckload quantities, in drums, in small packages. And the product sheet would move in series. And it would take four weeks for one person to finish the entire identification of that product. So the time it took from product development to having an actual saleable product took about a year
Yeah.
to work through all of this and get the drums designed and built and get the labels and everything completed. So what I did, and these were friends of mine too, but so I went in and sat down and I flow charted their entire thought process and put it on a flow diagram. If this, then this. If this, then this, and step through all of the possible permutations and decision making points for each individual. And then I went to our information systems group and asked for a computer model that would allow me to integrate that flowchart into a computer. And we were successful. In a nutshell, I was now able to take the physical properties of the chemical that we were developing and in 5 minutes do what took these people a year to do. It would
Right.
spit the answer out immediately off this computer.
So you
And the
became
problem
very
is,
valuable.
yeah, well,
Yeah.
well, they after we got it up and running, which took about 3 weeks, I came into my office and here they had fired all 7 of those people.
Oh no.
Yep. So I'm
Okay.
very
You became too
familiar.
valuable.
Yeah, and so I'm very familiar with where AI is going and the pitfalls of AI and the extreme ability to access information from AI.
Well, it's
But
really interesting you say that, and just to bring kind of a personal story into the AI, conversation we're having here. I had a check engine light come on the other day, a couple of days ago, and actually used AI to do the simple
troubleshoot.
fix. Yes, it was a kind of a walkthrough of some simple fixes on my particular model of vehicle. Things that I, as a very not astute in car language, could do myself with the help of my son and my
Sure,
husband and whatnot, and saved me probably several $100s in just a
sure.
diagnostic alone. That was a thought that crossed my mind is, if I can use AI to do something like that, and I kind of cut out the need for a mechanic, and this kind of snowballs down the pike a little bit, what are we looking at for jobs here, and people losing their jobs? It is a real scare for people. I mean, I have a nephew coming out of college right now with a computer engineering degree. You know, what's that look like for him?
Yeah, this is a major shift. This is almost equivalent to the Industrial Revolution.
Sure.
And how we adjust to this, it's not real clear yet.
Yeah, and I
Um,
don't think it will be right away. But it's super apparent in certain aspects of life for sure. And
yeah,
even affects me. I mean, I use AI quite regularly for preparing for my podcasts. I use it quite a bit. Um,
in my lifetime, we went through what I call the knowledge age, where
mhm.
in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, we were trying to acquire knowledge. What was really going on? We had encyclopedias at that time, no
Yes,
computers,
right.
and they were trying to compile all the knowledge. And then we went through what's called the information age. From all of the tools to acquire the knowledge, we generated a huge amount of information. And then we got into how do we store all that information? What's the databases look like? What's the inventory? What's the big bag that holds all this information? And how do we access it? Because businesses are based on what you don't know.
Hmm.
Once you become knowledgeable, because money all arises from knowledge, not from the materials. For example, if I had a drinking glass here made out of glass, um, I buy that glass. I don't buy the materials, the silicone that's in it. That's just a few cents. What I'm buying is the knowledge of the guy who folded and molded that glass into a shape of a nice designed glass.
Exactly.
So everything we do is buying knowledge. Well, when knowledge becomes free, how are these businesses going to survive? The reason oil companies make money is because they know how to take oil out of the ground, run it through their refineries, and they end up with gasoline.
Hmm.
Well, if everybody knew how a refinery worked, why would we need an oil company? And we haven't worked through this yet because once knowledge becomes free, which is what AI is going to do, um, why have a doctor? Why
Right.
have a surgeon when you have now robots that can do the surgery even more precisely than a human surgeon? So that whole informational age, but it has allowed us to look at things in multi dimensions. Um, for example, in biochemistry, it takes 27 different chemical reactions to convert glucose into energy. The sugar we eat to be able to have enough electricity for us to have this conversation.
Yeah.
Now, each one of those steps has a waste product. So when this chemical reacts with this chemical, it generates a product or two. Well, those are waste products. But in that pathway, it becomes the raw material for another pathway. And pretty soon, if we start with glucose, we have 50 different chemical reactions that cascade out of that perfectly, just so I can generate enough electricity through ATP to be able to talk.
Right.
If any one of those is missing, the complexity is beyond anything that we can even do from a human point of view.
Sure. And
But
I think the one thing that's missing, though, that, hopefully people don't forget, especially as we're talking about AI and knowledge and all of that, is kind of that human connection that you can't explain or that you can't get from your phone or a computer or an AI app or anything like that. It's just that kind of one-on-one. I have a fantastic doctor that I love, that I see, and I could probably get all of the information I need from an app, an AI app, or ask. But I
mhm.
love that connection with him where I can sit down and we can have like
You know
this
what I think it
connection.
is? If we rely on AI too much, we'll begin to lose compassion and empathy for other human beings. So
Exactly.
there's a key element there, and I'm beginning to see it in this generation where they're spending their time playing games.
Yes.
They don't have the empathy and the compassion to care for another person. It's all about their existence at that moment in time in that place.
Yeah.
And that becomes a little bit of a problem. But
Exactly.
but all during my career, I had to interface with other people. You're probably in the same boat. You
Yeah.
you, you have to be able to bounce things off, because if you don't, you're stuck in your own little uh, cranium up here, and this cranium isn't always right. So you have to have at least a relationship that allows you to go talk to people about very complex emotional or relational things
Yes.
that they have to feed back to you, and you have to be in a position to understand that. And my whole life was like that. I'm not sure, looking back, if there was anything, including the patents, that were purely driven by me, because the only advantage I had was I had such a multitude of industries that I worked in that I could see what this industry is doing, but this one is not. What happens if we come, and mine was a process
Hmm.
of bringing what's going on over here. Is it possible to do the same thing over here in a different process? For example, I built mass polymerization polymer reactors. These are very viscous, molten polystyrene, molten plastic, uh, uh, probably 300 degrees Fahrenheit. We're moving down a reactor. It's reacting, very viscous, very thick. Well, I used that same technology when a friend of mine, Colonel Tony Wachinski, came to me and asked me if I could take dewatered sludge from a wastewater treatment plant on a military base and be able to react it and get it hot to sterilize it. Well, I used the same kinetic and uh, calculations on fluid dynamics from the polymer industry into the wastewater industry. And I developed the Bioset process. It's a process where we take dewatered sludge, we add two chemicals to it. As it's pumped down the pipe, it gets exceedingly hot and generates ammonia, and it kills every single virus, enteric virus, every bacteria, every helminth ova, every tapeworm. It's cleaner than dirt when it comes out. And as a matter of fact, to prove that point, in Austin, Texas, I went up against my competitor who was liking to ship or transport the infectious material for
Hmm.
land application, has to go out on permitted lands. And we were vying for the same project. And I had my dirt laying on the table, and he had his in a hermetically sealed jar. And just to show what it looked like, well, I poured mine out on the table, and wet my finger and put it in that pile of poo, dirt, and I put it back in my mouth. And there were about 500 people at that hearing, and they all went, "Ooh, he just ate crap." But but it was sterile.
Yeah.
And then
And
I
he was
wondered for the
the
next.
competitor was not about to do that.
Oh no, he freaked out. He truly freaked out. He said that
Yeah.
is unsafe. And then I worried for the next week whether I was going to get a tapeworm or not, but I didn't. So so from that technology, um, and from some other wastewater technologies, then I built 27 wastewater treatment plants that used that technology in the United States. I built
Hmm.
two in Canada, and then was asked to go to China in 2003 and work on building, because they don't have wastewater infrastructures in China.
Right.
So I helped them build their wastewater treatment plants for the 2008 Olympics. And,
Amazing.
and then I worked on several projects, worked on the Lunar Outpost Commission in 91 to 94. We were going to go Earth, Moon to Mars. And I had two projects in that. And then that ended in 1994 when the medical team said nobody can go to Mars because of the radiation poisoning. Nobody will make it. They'll all die from inflammatory disease
Ah,
caused by three different types of radiation.
okay.
So now that's in the back of my mind.
Sure.
And
I
then
see
I
where this
worked,
is going.
yeah. So
Yeah.
then I worked on the development of electromagnetic pulse weapons to design and build weapons that could be used to change alpha, beta, theta, and gamma frequencies in the brain to create fear and anxiety in enemy soldiers.
Okay, before you go on, this fascinates me. Um, because I think the world that we live in right now, this has become more of a topic of conversation. I've heard it come up, podcasts I've listened to, etc. Wh- What would be, and I think this is probably kind of along the lines of, the dangers of creating a nuclear weapon. What would be the purpose of creating something like that when you know very well that it could come back and be used against you?
Um,
You're creating it for the enemy. I get it. So, and maybe just as scientists you're being part of the development and whatnot. Maybe you don't have a thought process in that, but I'm going to ask anyway.
yeah. What happens in weapons development? You always have to assume your enemy knows as much as you do.
Okay.
You're not operating in a vacuum, and all you can do is be one step ahead of them.
Hmm.
They're going the same direction. They're even more motivated in some of their ideology to go faster if they had the ability to do it. They know we just have the ability and the technology um, to go ahead and move the ball forward. That's why we're leading in aerospace. That's why we're leading in
Yeah.
military weapons design. But every single country would wish that they could do the same thing,
Hmm.
and they're just not capable yet. We're still ahead of them in that game. So, in that regard, for example, in the first Gulf War, I can't get into a lot of details, but there was about 500,000 Iraqi soldiers that threw their weapons down and just marched out of the desert.
Hmm.
That was a psych warfare program. And we could flash light at them at certain frequencies, create their gamma frequency and their brain changes. Um, and we could create fear and anxiety. And then from 2 miles away, we could talk to them and they heard us inside their head, in between their ears. If you've ever put a stereo headset on and you can get it so finely tuned on your ears, it almost sounds like the music is in the middle of your brain.
Right.
So we had and developed a technology called LRAD. And that was a sound device where we could talk to people from about 2 miles away and they would hear us in the middle of their brains. So we could stress them with the electromagnetic pulse weapons, and then we could talk to them in their own language and tell them that Allah wanted them to surrender.
Hmm.
And that's a lot of stress when you're in a warfare battlefield environment. And they threw down their weapons and they came out. So it saved 500,000 lives as a
Yeah.
non-lethal weapon. Well, the reason I'm telling that story is because later on, MIT, through Dr. Li Wei Sai, determined what causes Alzheimer's. And it's caused by a misfolded protein called the amyloid beta protein.
Right.
And it wraps around right in the myelin of the nerve cell, and it tears the myelin away. The myelin is the insulating material from the body of the nerve cell down to the little dendritic communicating part of the axon. Well, to keep it from short circuiting, there's a fat layer called myelin in between there, just like a wire, insulation on a wire.
So the
Well,
myelin
the amyloid,
sheath, yeah, is
yep,
often how I hear
yep,
it described. Yes.
yep. And the amyloid beta plaque would wrap around that and it would dissolve it. It would, and then you get these short circuits, too much electricity flying out of the neuron. The neuron can't generate enough energy to keep up with the electrical discharge, and the neuron dies. And that's what causes Alzheimer's disease. Now, what MIT found, and it's on our website at ValAsta.net. What MIT found was that if they put a hole in a mouse's head and they inserted a fiber optic and they flashed that fiber optic at a certain electromagnetic pulse, a light frequency, and they could activate the microglia in the brain. And people probably don't want to hear this, but we have little organisms in our brain that's swinging through the neuronal forest, all the neurons looking for debris and viruses and just crap to eat.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what they are. They're not human, but they're with us from our birth until the day we die. They're immortal, almost like cancer cells. But they're crucial in keeping our brains functional and healthy. Now, what happens when we get older, these little microglia get lazy and they begin to lose energy and they go into a little bit of a hibernation state. So they're not eating as much amyloid beta plaque. So it begins to plate out, and that's why it's an age onset disease.
Okay.
So when MIT put the light in, that light frequency energized the microglia. They began to rapidly consume the amyloid beta plaque, and they were able to reverse Alzheimer's in these mice. But they drilled holes in the rats' heads to insert the fiber optic. So I called up there and I told them, I said, you know, you're not going to be able to drill holes in people's heads and do this as a treatment for Alzheimer's. And I said, suppose I could send that same electromagnetic pulse through the eye, external. Because the eye is very good at taking the electromagnetic photon and converting it into electricity to go down the optic nerve. So she asked me if I had those devices. I said, yeah. I said, I own those devices. So I sent some up, they tested them, and it worked. So you could just be exposed to flashing light in a room, not 60 hertz,
Mm-hmm.
but you can be exposed to a light in a room that's 20 hertz. And you do that for 45 minutes a day, and you will not get Alzheimer's, or the progression of Alzheimer's will stop and you get some reversal. So that device is called a VLED device, variable light emitting device. And we sell those all around the world. For
Wow.
$485 a piece, you have it for the rest of your life. It's got a lifetime warranty. If it goes bad, you send it to us. We send you back another one, because this is crucial in stopping this dementia, Alzheimer's spiral that we're in.
I mean, it's amazing how much it has skyrocketed, even just in my lifetime. I was born in the early 80s. Um, just how prevalent and it has become. And I know the conversations around it are very interesting because it's, we're pretty far away from any kind of treatment, but what we're talking about is a drug treatment, right?
Yeah, right.
Not any other kind of alternative treatments, which I'm not surprised. I have not heard of this before because it's not coming from a drug company.
Right. There's only two types of ways to deal with disease, either mass or energy. I focused on going both angles.
Hmm.
The energy is the electromagnetic pulse
Hmm.
device. The mass side of this is ValAsta. And that's the product that I developed because I may have gotten too close to some of the things that I worked on.
Yeah.
But I ended up with an incurable bone cancer in 2003 and couldn't get my blood pressure regulated, couldn't figure out what was going on, thought it was heart disease. Turned out it wasn't. And then the doctor told me I had an incurable bone cancer called polycythemia vera. And I asked him about chemo and radiation, and he just shook his head no.
That it wasn't going to
And
work. It wasn't worth it.
nope. And there wasn't enough people who had that type of bone cancer for the pharmaceutical companies to do research to find an acceptable protocol from a chemo point of view.
Okay.
So, so what happened was the only solution that they had. It's that old analogy: the solution to pollution is dilution.
Right.
So every month I had to go in and be phlebotomized. They take my blood out to try
Yeah.
to thin it down. Normally, you produce 3 to 5 million red blood cells every day. I was doing 35 million to
Mm.
60 million every day. And my blood was like ketchup. My heart enlarged. Um, my blood pressure, 280 over 160. I was going to stroke. I knew how this was going to end. And that was very unnerving. And I did that for 4 years. Every month to keep me alive, I would go in and they'd pull my blood out and give me saline. And at the end of that 4 year period, I knew it wasn't going in my favor.
Hmm.
My blood was getting thicker. My platelet count was beginning to be affected. So at that point, God and I got really close because I realized up until that point in my life, I was pinched. Up until that point, I thought from a narcissistic point of view that I was in control. I could figure out. I had all the tools in the toolbox. I knew how a single cell worked all the way up to what's at the center of a black hole in outer space. I could figure out everything in between. I knew that and I had the skill base to analyze and model those things. But now I'm pinched. I reached a point of my limitation and I knew it wasn't going to be a good outcome for me. So one very dark morning, about 4 o'clock in the morning, sat at the kitchen table, cup of coffee. I just quit. I just said, I'm done. I knew I was going to stroke and be dependent upon my family. And a loaded 38 would have been pretty handy.
Right.
But it just came to me that everything we have or need is here on this planet. Then there's got to be some animals or leaves or something that doesn't get cancer. And it was like an epiphany. One more chance. I had access to the military database that had all the known information of the universe in it. I think that's where AI gets its information from. It's a database called ProQuest. So I had been placed in a position where I had a clearance that allowed me to access that database. So I went in and queried it. And I asked for all the animals on the planet that apparently don't get cancer. And 5 came back: salmon, pink flamingos, sharks, elephants, and naked mole rats. Since then, we know shrimp and lobsters don't get cancer. But at that time, those are the only 5 I knew.
They share an interesting pigmentation, all of those.
They're all a little pink.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, that pinkness comes from the astaxanthin. But so I was working on a project for DARPA in San Diego, and Scripps Oceanographic was part of that. And one of the scientists at Scripps, I asked, we were having drinks in a hotel,
Hmm.
and I said, "Can you get tissue samples of these 5 animals and do a mass spec? I want to know every molecule in all 5 of those animals." But I want to put in a screening um, algorithm that says I only want to know those molecules not produced by the organism, has no nutritional value to the organism, and yet is found in all five of those species.
Hmm.
And it took him about 4 months. And he came back and he said, we found one, a single molecule in all five of those. And that was astaxanthin.
Wow. Let me
And I
ask
didn't
you a
know,
personal question.
yeah,
What were you fearful in those 4 months of waiting that you might not make it that long to get to that answer?
yeah. I went through a period, Brandy, where fear no longer is a part of my life.
Sure.
I died at that moment.
Yeah.
So there was no fear. There's no fear of losing my children. There's no fear of being beheaded. There's no fear of dying in a car. I don't have fear at all in my life. It's like I've already died.
Right.
And I got a whole new life. There's no fear anymore. Um,
Do you think that helped
oh
push
oh
you along a little longer?
oh, it did. The guardrails came down.
Yeah.
The best analogy is we're zooming down an interstate with sound barriers on both sides of the interstate, and we're focused on bouncing between those sound barriers to keep it on the interstate. In my life, all the sound barriers collapsed, and I could look out and see the valleys. I could look out and see the mountains. My whole life changed, and my what motivated me in the first half of my life completely changed. And it's hard to explain, but the fear, I know what that is when people are given a bad diagnosis from
Mm-hmm.
cancer.
Mm-hmm.
That fear of, what does this mean? Am I really going to die? And
Yeah.
the point is, yeah, you are really going to die. We are all going to die. There's no getting out of here alive.
No.
And once that fear of death goes away, now you can live.
It's like a sharp focus is kind of what I've been explained, right? When you're not really bogged down by fear or doubt or any of those kind of really heavy emotions, it kind of your worldview becomes just a little bit broader.
And you reach a point where it gives you the ability to think about somebody else,
Right.
to
Right.
serve somebody else, to help somebody else.
Yeah.
Because what happens to me doesn't matter. And I can share this with you. In April of 2019, well, prior to that, when I ended up taking ValAsta, and my cancer, I started out at 4 milligrams per day, but I was growing my own algae. I got the algae species from University of Texas, and those insects blow up. I call them hillbilly hot tubs, but you can buy them. They have a blower and a
Yeah.
heater and everything on it, and I can control the temperature. So I put that in my backyard, and I was growing the algae, and I got really good at growing that species of algae. But I knew how to stress it from the literature, how to make the algae think that its pond was drying up, which caused it to produce the astaxanthin. And when a pond starts to dry up, the salt content increases, the
Hmm.
concentration increases. And that alerts the algae to say, I've got to create this anti radiation molecule to protect me because my pond's going to dry out. I'm going to get into the dirt and I got to be blocked from the sun's ultraviolet radiation. That's why it produces astaxanthin. So all I did was grew the algae, then begin to add salt to the reactor. And within 48 hours, all of the algae went from green algae to deep red purple.
There's that color.
Yeah. And
Wow.
and then I floated the algae out and I skimmed it off. I put it in a dehydrator and I knew it was 3.8% astaxanthin. So I could calculate if I set a dose, let's say at 4 or 5 milligrams a day, I could calculate exactly how many grams of biomass I had to eat to give me that dose level. And so that's where I started because it's a red algae, and everything I knew about red algae was it was toxic and poisonous.
Right, right.
So I didn't want it to kill my kidneys or my liver. So I started out at 4 milligrams. In about 3 months, my phlebotomies went from once a month to once every 2 months. Statistically, it wasn't significant, but
Mhm.
when I looked at my blood work, it wasn't killing me either. My liver enzymes were normal, my kidney function was normal. So
So
then I thought, okay,
you weren't toxic at that. I mean, it wasn't toxic to
no,
you at that dosage.
nope. So then I thought, I'm going to triple the dose. I'm going to go to 12 milligrams per day. So I went to 12, and my phlebotomies got pushed out to once every 4 months. That was statistically significant. So I had three slopes of the curve. I had the
Mhm.
control. Once a month, I was phlebotomized. Took a month for the red blood cells to get to that level. Then at 4 milligrams, I was phlebotomized once every 2 months. Then at 12 milligrams, I was phlebotomized once every 4 months. So the slope, the growth of the red blood cells was diminishing.
Wow.
So now I had 3 points that I could calculate mathematically and determine how much do I have to take so that I'm never phlebotomized for the next 50 years of my life. And it come out to be 96 milligrams. So I started taking 100 milligrams a day, and I've not been phlebotomized since 2008. Cured me. So then
That's
I
almost
spent
18 years. Well, about 18 years.
18 years ago, but I was
Wow.
given my life expectancy. When I went into the doctor, I asked him, how long can I live with this? He said, most people, 97% of the people perish within 10 years.
Mm.
But he said, in your condition, your blood is so thick that you could throw a blood clot to your brain, your heart, or your lung, and it would
Any
take me
minute.
10 minutes to declare you dead. And off to the hospital I went, and that was my first phlebotomy.
Sure.
So I should have died in 2013. That would have been my 97% probability of death in 2013. In 2008, my phlebotomies ended.
Wow.
And it took me 7 to 8 years to figure out why biochemically did this work. I did not want to go out and just say it worked and not know why it worked.
I can imagine as a scientist that would not
Oh,
fly.
yeah, that
You
was
were not leaving this earth without that answer, I'm guessing.
no, I was going to figure this out, and I did.
Yeah.
So I found the four free radicals that cause 92% of all human death. The superoxide, singlet oxygen, the peroxyl, and the hydroxyl free radical. There's a fifth one called a nitriol. It's an RNS, reactive nitrogen species. But
Mhm.
but I focused on those four because they were the vast majority that's produced by the mitochondria in the cell. And it turns out that those four cause arthritis, cancer, type 2 diabetes, heart disease, Hashimoto's, irritable bowel, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's,
Wow.
MS are all caused by one or more of those four free radicals. So then I go back into the textbooks and I begin to look at what possible mechanisms under what's called a Gibbs free energy, what possible mechanisms could astaxanthin do in neutralizing those four free radicals? And it turns out two ways. The first one is the double bonds of the astaxanthin can grab a hold of an OH free radical or a superoxide. Um, the other one is astaxanthin has the unique ability to donate an electron to a free radical and itself not become a free radical because it's resonant. It's a large molecule, and it electrostatically will move electrons, and it won't become a free radical. Unlike vitamin C, when vitamin C donates an electron, it becomes a free radical. And large dose vitamin C can cause inflammation because of that property. Astaxanthin is one of the only natural antioxidants that itself does not contribute to an inflammatory state during its metabolism to get out of your body.
Interesting. Okay, let's talk about,
So,
I want to go backwards
yep.
before you continue. Um, what creates these free radicals in our system that create all the inflammation that turn into all of these chronic illnesses.
Okay, we'll start with sugar.
Okay.
And now I want to tell everybody, get a pencil and paper because there will be a test after this. Uh, uh, Sugar has a lot of OH groups hanging off of it. That's what
Mhm.
makes it water soluble. It'll dissolve in water.
Mhm.
So when sugar is taken into the mitochondria, it uses that phosphorylation, that oxidation step, to get an electron to move adenosine diphosphate up to adenosine triphosphate. ATP is what drives our heat, drives our electrical components. That's the key to life. That's the molecule and that's what's done in the mitochondria.
Right.
But when the mitochondria begins to consume large amounts of sugar, what does it do with those OHs? A lot of them become the OH hydroxyl free radical. They're missing an electron
Okay.
because that electron was used in the reaction down the membrane of the mitochondria. So now it generates a huge amount of these hydroxyl free radicals. Now, when we're young, we can do a lot of stupid things. You can eat a lot of donuts and a lot of sugar, drink a lot of beer. You can
I
listen.
have I've got three kids and we just ended Halloween. It is the most stressful time of year for
Oh,
me.
but
I'm such a
I'm going to
nerd. I'm
give
like, you
you,
guys, let's donate it.
yeah, yes, but I'm going to give you a little good news. So we have three antioxidants that we produce naturally. There's glutathione,
Hmm.
there's catalase,
Okay.
and there's superoxide dismutase. But these have to be produced intracellular, not extracellular. It can't be produced outside the cell or
Okay.
added outside the
So it needs
cell.
to be produced inside.
Inside. And it comes from amino acids, tryptophan, tyrosine, leucine, isoleucine. Those are the amino acids that you have to make those cellular antioxidants. Well, in the study that I did from a 5-year-old to 105. I pulled blood work from those age groups. I looked at the glutathione levels in their bloodstream versus their HSCRP. And their HSCRP is a blood test for measuring their inflammatory stress level.
Okay.
So if you have a lot of glutathione, like when you're 5 to 40 in women, your HSCRP is very low. You don't get diseases. You don't get estrogen derived breast cancer when girls are at their highest estrogen levels.
Hmm.
So estrogen doesn't feed cancer. It doesn't cause cancer, but I'll explain what does. So from age 5 to about 40 in women, glutathione levels are very high. We can do a lot of things. Our body protects us. And then at age 40, nature cuts off about 50% of your ability to naturally produce glutathione.
Mm,
It's nature's way of taking us out. That's why we get age onset diseases.
right.
So when the glutathione level drops in the blood work, we see the HSCRP start to climb. Your inflammatory disease state is now in high gear,
Sure.
and you are going to present with a disease. If that number is over 3 milligrams per liter, you have a 92% chance of presenting with a disease within 5 years. That's the key. That was what I was able to figure out from a research point of view. Now, for women, it's about the average age is 42. For men, it's about 50. But all of a sudden, we start feeling these aches and pains, the inflammation in our joints. We wake up in the morning, our fingers are stiff.
Hmm.
Um, that's what's causing it. But everybody presents differently. I guess the best analogy is think of the structure of a tree. You have the root structure underground, comes up to a trunk, then you have all these branches off the top. Well, the root structure are the causes of ROS, of reactive oxygen species.
Hmm.
You have radiation, you have pesticides, you have alcohol, smoking, sugar, diet, all of the things of living your life and metabolizing these things all cause those four, think of the trunk of the tree as the four free radicals.
Yeah.
Those four free radicals, if they're left there long enough, they blossom into branches called disease.
Mm-hmm.
The doctors stand underneath the branches and treat each disease. They're not interested in how that disease originated. So what
This
we
is the
think,
whole reason I host this show because that method drives me insane.
oh yeah,
It drives me insane.
they have no interest in curing a disease.
Yeah,
It's not in their financial best interest, and
sure.
that's a whole other podcast. But
Sure.
what we were able to do was with the ValAsta, we can neutralize and chop the tree down at the trunk. All the diseases go away.
Interesting.
So we're at the not at the root cause. The root cause is in the roots,
Sure.
but we're one step above the root cause now. We cut the tree off and stop those reactive oxygen species from causing damage to organs, to blood work, to bone marrow, to the DNA. For example, I was able to isolate the guanine, the G part of the DNA. We
Hmm.
have A, T, C, and G. Those are the four amino acids in DNA. The G has the lowest oxidative potential. So when a hydroxyl free radical, and I'll explain what a hydroxyl free radical is, comes in, it steals an electron from that guanine. Well, that ladder of that DNA flies off. It's no longer attached to the C.
Hmm.
So the T and the A line up, the G and the C's line up. And all the way down the ladders of the DNA, you have on this side, you might have T, T, C, G, A, C, C randomly down. And
Yeah.
over here is the corresponding that matches. T can only match with
But
A
they're
can
no
only match
longer
with C,
matching.
and they're no longer matching. So now what happens? PARP, there's a DNA repair enzyme that comes in and says, oh my golly, I don't know what that was supposed to be. Let's make it a C. It makes it a C and then changes the other side, and now you've got a DNA mutation. And that's the onset. And then when that's ripped off in the RNA to make proteins, now you have these other proteins that aren't conforming, and that's what cancer is.
That
Now,
is so fascinating.
what is a hydroxyl free radical? This is going to be on the test, so I hope everybody's taking good notes. Oxygen has 8 protons. Hydrogen has 1. So the positive charges are 9.
Hmm.
8 from oxygen, 1 from
One.
hydrogen.
Hmm.
Okay, a balanced 0 charge, perfect hydroxyl balanced charge, it would have to have 9 electrons because they're minus, protons are positive. So you'd have a 0 charge. Well, a hydroxyl free radical has a 0 charge. It has exactly 9 protons and 9 electrons. The problem is in the outermost valence, so you have 2 electrons in the innermost orbital, and then you have, you're supposed to have 8 to make it perfectly balanced. A pair of electrons has to set in that p orbital. Well, you already got 2 here of the 9, so that
Hmm.
leaves 7. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That electron is not paired. That makes it extremely reactive. Whatever it bumps into it's going to steal an electron, whether it's an insulin protein, it'll misfold an insulin protein, that's called insulin resistance. The
Mm.
amyloid protein will misfold, that's called Alzheimer's. Cancer generates a huge number of these hydroxyl free radicals because cancer eats 16 times more sugar than a normal cell. 16 times more of those hydroxyls are being processed in the mitochondria of a cancer cell. So statistically, the probability they're generating a huge number of these OH free radicals, OH 0 charge.
Hmm.
Well, cancer pushes those OHs outside its cell. Now, the hydroxyl free radical is acidic. It has a pH of 5.2 to 6.8. Our blood pH is 7.35, which is slightly alkaline. But cancer lives in an acid environment because of these OH zero charge.
Right.
So what ValAsta did, I ended up attaching a glucose molecule to the astaxanthin. Looks like a tadpole. So when the cancer sees that sugar, it wants it for food. It's called
Hmm.
a Trojan horse. But so it sucks that sugar into the cancer cell. Well, once inside the cancer cell, enzymes crack that sugar off, and the cancer cell uses that for energy. Now the astaxanthin is intracellular, and
Okay.
it donates an electron to the OH zero charge, and the OH becomes -1. It has one extra electron more than it has protons. That's called a hydroxyl ion. That hydroxyl ion has a pH of 12. It's like lime inside the cancer cell.
Wow.
And the cancer cell cannot tolerate alkalinity. So the cell membrane of the cancer, it's called saponification. It comes apart, and all the guts of the cancer cell flood into the bloodstream.
Are they neutralized?
All the debris, you mean,
Yeah,
or
yeah.
well, your blood
Once
has
it
to
cracks
carry it
open and
away.
goes into the bloodstream, that sounds scary, but
Well, well, we anytime in apoptosis or cell death, the guts of the cell
Mhm.
all end up in the bloodstream. Well, we have neutrophils, basophils, we have macrophages that recycle all the amino acids of that.
Okay.
There's nothing dangerous about the components of a cancer cell
Gotcha.
because they're our cells.
Right.
They are of us. They're
Hmm.
not a parasite. They're not a different DNA. They are our DNA. So what happens is they just break the amino acids off and they reuse those in cellular growth. Um, we have a tremendous recycle capacity for our amino acids.
Wow. Okay.
It's a
Wow.
very interesting concept, and the medical industry has not taken this approach to understand this. They're taught it. Every doctor has taken a biochemistry course that teaches this. There's no clinical work that has to be done here. This is known text, but they suppress it because the truth of being able to stop disease
Mm.
is not economically feasible.
That again, it goes back to kind of my frustration is that, every one of us is affected by cancer some way or another, whether it's a family member, ourselves, a friend. Um, None of us are unaffected by it. And it's just crazy to me why
Mm-hmm.
information like that would be suppressed. So let me ask
We,
you this then. What
yeah.
are you doing right now to, I guess, besides these podcasts, having these conversations, what kind of headway have you made in being able to get this out there?
In April of 2019, I went and testified in Washington, and five major oncological hospitals were there: Sloan Kettering, MD Anderson, Mayo, Cleveland Clinic. I don't know if it's MD Anderson or not, but Mayo, MD Anderson, Sloan, MD Anderson, Cleveland Clinic was
Cleveland
the other
Clinic.
one. There
Okay.
were five of them there.
Hmm.
So I testified for about 2 hours on what my research had shown as to what causes these diseases. They were shocked. And
So they
they
were receptive.
I could see some of them in the back shaking their head no.
Okay.
So it wasn't all receptive, but there
Okay.
were a bunch of representatives and senators there too. They were.
Hmm.
So, and I think Ben Carson was there at that time, and some of his staff were there.
Hmm. Ron Johnson would be another medical um, physician, right? Rand
Yeah,
Paul. Hmm.
yeah.
Okay.
So that was in April of 2019. In July of 2019, I received a a complaint for practicing medicine without a license from the state of Oregon, and they are in the process of suing me.
Wow. Sounds like a
Now,
very
I'm not
Oregon
a,
thing to do.
oh yeah, I'm not a prescribing doctor.
Sure.
I'm a research doctor.
Hmm.
So I wrote back and told them that this is a First Amendment issue, that they had no right, no government official has the right to stop my research.
Hmm.
And I, at the bottom, I put in there that any government official that does this, I need their name, address, and bank account number because I was going to sue them personally, which was allowed under the First Amendment. So after that, um, I received another complaint from the state of Texas, and I ended up winning that very, very quickly. They backed away when they
Hmm.
realized it was a First Amendment violation.
What was
Then in
what was their purpose?
there was an oncologist in Oregon who wanted to put a patient on chemotherapy, and he denied chemotherapy in lieu of Velasta, of
The
the product
patient
that I
did,
had. Yeah, the patient chose that.
because that's their right.
Yep. And it ticked off this doctor because he lost $250,000 from the insurance company by not putting him on chemo.
This makes my
And it
blood
affected,
boil.
oh, it made his bank account go down. But
Sure.
he ended up being investigated. I asked the Department of Health and Human Services in Oregon to investigate him
Hmm.
for what's called remuneration bias. He's making decisions on his patients based on how much money is in his bank account.
Sure.
Well, they investigated it, and I'm not privy to what happened,
Hmm.
but I know they left me alone. Then at the end of November, actually December 10th, I was hanging Christmas lights in my front yard, and I have a wooded lot across the street from me. And I always have my lights on, and I'm going down the fence on the house side of the fence. It's a wooden fence, and my lights went out, and I flinched to go back to the plug that I had just plugged in. I thought that something had happened. I just went, and the fence blew up, chest level, exploded. And I thought my lights blew up in my left hand. And I jumped back and I looked at my lights. Then I heard the shot. Well, I jumped behind the truck that was parked there and I yelled up, whoever was in the woods, to stop shooting. Didn't hear anything. Nope. Nobody came out. Nobody said anything.
So it
And
was
I wanted
not
to
likely
pee.
your theory or your thinking this was probably not just a one-off kind of accident that
I
you're a
thought it
little
was a
too
deer
close
hunter.
to people's livelihoods
Well,
here.
I truly thought it was a deer hunter shooting towards houses.
Uh-huh.
And so I didn't hear anything. So I ran in the house and I called the sheriff. The sheriff came out and they filed a police report, public information. And he put a wire in the bullet hole and it pointed right up into the woods.
Yeah.
And so he pulled his revolver and he walks up into the woods there. And he told me to go in the house. So I went in the house and he came down, knocked on the door, and he says, "What do you do for a living?" I told him. He said, "We need to talk." And I said, "What'd you find?" He said, "Well," he said, "You tell me the details of what you were doing." And he said, I'll tell you what I think is going on. I said,
Hmm.
"Okay." So I told him everything. And I said, "Was it a deer hunter?" He said, "No, no, Mr. Shepard, it's not a deer hunter." He said, "I found a big pile of leaves where somebody had been laying in these leaves about 30 meters away from your front porch." And he said, he had been there for at least 2 hours because I found where he had rolled over and urinated. And he found a boot print. And he was to cast that boot print. And I have pictures of the bullet hole. I can send you if you're interested in it. But um, he he proceeded to tell me that this was probably an attempt on my life. And
Sounds that
I was
way.
still in a little bit of shock, thinking that somebody would do that.
Hmm.
But um, he turned it over to the FBI. I got a call from FBI agent, and I asked him if this was like real, And he said, oh, absolutely. He said, I've got 17 cases right now of doctors having cures for diseases. He says, you're the only one I have alive.
Oh my goodness. They had
And I said,
succeeded in killing,
all 17. And they were listed as suicides. He said, I got one guy shot in
wow.
the head twice,
But it was
right
a
above,
suicide.
yeah, ruled as a
I'm
suicide by the
sorry. I
state
don't mean to laugh,
state
but my
commissioner.
goodness.
He had a bullet entered, cracked his skull, tumbled, and they found it lodged between his forehead and his skull,
Uh-huh.
never penetrated his cranium.
Mm-hmm.
And the second bullet hole was in the back of the head.
Mm-hmm.
And and I said, that's not suicide. He said, it's ruled as a suicide. And I said, how did they do that? And they said, well, shot himself the first time, it knocked him out. He came to, realized he was still alive, put the gun in the back of his head, and pulled the trigger. He said, so you're telling me this is real? He said, oh, it's very real.
Yeah.
And I said, well, how do you stop it? And he gave me the best advice. He said, it's bad for business, but you have to go public with everything you know.
Sure.
He said, don't take it personal. They're not out to kill you or your family. They want to stop the information.
Mm-hmm.
And so in December, I did about 30 videos by disease, and they're on YouTube, so
Yeah.
everybody can see them. So, how this works against type 2 diabetes, how this works against cancer, how this works against Alzheimer's. And I haven't had any problems since.
Let me ask you this, because and this goes back to what we were talking about before, not living in fear. How did you get over the fear after that? Because there's one thing of, dealing with a life-threatening disease, and coming face to face with your mortality. And it's quite another to come face to face with what I would consider evil, because that is evil to me.
It is. I truly, and it's going to be hard for people to understand. I have no fear. My pain level is extremely high. 5 weeks ago, um, I was watching an molten aluminum pour into a mold for
Hmm.
another project, and it exploded. And molten aluminum come flying at me, wrapped around my arm,
Mm,
1,500 degrees Fahrenheit, and froze on my arm. And if somebody wants to take a look at it, I'll show you what it looks like.
yeah.
So I had second and third degree burns underneath this arm. This was 5 weeks ago.
Yeah.
I don't know whether this is appropriate or not, but I'll show you anyway.
It's just an arm.
It is completely healed.
Wow.
It burnt all the hair out from underneath my arm, vaporized my shirt. Right here was a third degree burn hole, and right here was a third degree burn hole. And I had to cut tissue myself. Never went to a burn unit, never went to a doctor.
Yeah.
Treated it myself with Neosporin and ValAsta. That was it. But
Wow.
up here, I had skin that was blown off. And the metal that froze on my arm, I reached up underneath and ripped it off.
Oh my
Probably shouldn't have
goodness.
done that, but that's what I did.
Yeah.
And
Extra painful.
it came off. I still have that piece of metal in my drawer at my desk.
Wow.
Um, Everybody around there, I was the only one that got hit. And everyone around there said, we got to get you uh, to the hospital. I said, no. I said, I'm not. I said, it's not my time to go yet. And they couldn't believe it. So they cut the rest of the shirt off of me.
Hmm.
And I chose not to go. And if anyone wants to see the pictures of what it looked like, it really looked bad. And there was plenty of room for shock. And I don't know if you can see that or not.
Oh my goodness. Yes.
And you
That was
see this
5 weeks
top
ago.
5 weeks ago. Up here, you can see big pieces of skin
Wow.
I took my own scissors and scalpel and debrided all of that.
Yeah.
And it completely healed up in 5 weeks.
That's amazing.
My doctor, who I called, and he's sort of used to me, I think,
How
told
does
me I
he feel
probably
about what you do as a
he's
physician?
he every time I go in to see him, we get into these discussions. He just shakes his head. I've been If it's my time to go, it's my time to go. That's
Yeah.
the way I look at life.
Sure.
I cut this finger off here. You see the big V or
Mm-hmm.
ValAsta on it. I cut this entire tip off of a saw it fly across the room, and got it um, grafted. They trained the skin to go back up over. So I have fingerprint clear back up underneath
Oh,
here. So
interesting.
it'd be easy to identify me in a felony, I'm sure. Uh, but when you talk about fear, I truly lost it at that moment, at that pinch point in my life. It left me like somebody pulled the cork out of a tank. I fear nothing. I don't make decisions out of fear. And there was a friend of mine who's a Green Beret officer, and he wanted to know some of the stories too. And I was telling him, and his only comment to me was he had only met a couple people who had lost all fear,
Hmm.
and he said they were the most dangerous people on the planet.
Well, of course.
Well, well, I have sort of a moral, ethical part of me because I truly found God at that point in my life, and um, I we're all here for a purpose. So
So let me
nothing
ask you this.
frightens me.
I've not met very many scientists, or even physicians. I know a few, my own physician, and I've had him on this podcast, who are faithful people. Was that always the case for you, being a scientist?
No, I
Because
was
I
a
feel like there's this interesting dynamic with science and faith, where some people think they cannot coexist. Um,
I was
Maybe
one of
speak to that
those.
just a little bit.
Yeah, I was one of those. And then during COVID, I went back and got a doctorate in divinity because it bothered me so much
Okay.
as to what is really going on here.
Mm-hmm.
Why is anybody who truly understands the uh, the minutia of biology, what's going on in a single cell? It is not by chance, cannot be by chance. The best analogy that convinced me from an evolution point of view, I was a trained evolutionist, not anymore.
Yeah.
The more I found out, all that's bunk. It's all speculative. It's not even a theory. There's never been an experiment performed that proves that evolution moves from the hypothesis or the belief stage
Mm-hmm.
to the theory stage. Never been an experiment conducted. It's
Wow.
all speculation and guess and belief. I guess that evolutionists have their own religion.
Sure.
But
It seems that way.
what convinced me was a sperm cell. A sperm cell has a head and a tail,
Yeah.
and that tail is spinning at 100,000 revolutions per minute, very very fast. So when we with the electron microscopes, we can look in and see the motor that is spinning that tail. And it has a stator of 9 proteins perfectly positioned, and they're
Yeah.
stationary. That's called the stator. And then inside are these proteins, and they've so when an electron is fired around this stator, this thing inside these proteins pick up and follow the track of that electron as it moves around these these proteins.
Mm-hmm.
That's what spins the tail. These are complex motors. extremely complex. Then, if we remove one of the nine proteins, and so there's only eight, the tail stops.
Right.
So that means that all nine of those proteins had to be formed instantaneously at the same time. You can't produce one, wait 4 million years, wait for the next one, wait another 4 million. It makes absolutely no sense. So it had to be instantaneously created. And that's the basis of the entire life
Right.
is how well a sperm cell, how motive a sperm cell is. If that doesn't work,
We don't
we are
create
not
life.
here having this conversation.
Right. Right. It's
It's a
miraculous.
so when true biologists get into the fundamental crux of how life works, they're
Oof.
lost. They're
I'm sure
lost.
there's been some many a crisis when that question arises or um, your belief is tested or you have to question everything. And actually, that was going to be my question to you, which we've already kind of answered, is, how you deal with those very basic, miraculous life questions in these scientific ways. But it sounds like, it was a near-death experience, which I think happens quite a bit when you're faced
Yeah,
with your own mortality.
yeah. I call it my life's pinch point.
Hmm.
I didn't see heaven. I didn't see hell. I didn't see, you know, anything like that. But
Right.
um, I had just reached a point that my forward motion stopped. I was either going to break out, it was like hitting a wall. I was
Hmm.
either going to go under the wall and die, or I was somehow going to have to go over the wall.
Yeah.
I couldn't keep following the same path or career that I had at that point. And that was the epiphany. That was the point at which I threw everything away. I threw fear away.
Hmm.
I threw what people say that count, counteracts what I know.
Right.
It was easy for me to just, that's not true. It was easy for me to figure that out.
Yeah.
Um, People to this day ask, where did all this come from? How did you figure this out? And I said, when I look back now, of all the tools that I had in my toolbox, I could not have envisioned that working for DARPA and what I learned there and what I did in the petrochemical industry, what I did on the Lunar Outpost Commission, um, what I did in the wastewater environmental fields. They were independent boxes, but every single one of those, I've used every single tool that I learned
Yeah.
doing those projects that came to a single point in my life to solve this problem. And it worked. I used calculus. Who would have ever thought that you would ever use calculus? I used kinetics, thermodynamics. I used reaction kinetics, free radical
Hmm.
chemistry for making polymers. That's what makes polymers add one unit onto another to make a polymer chain, is that free radical. So I
Yeah.
had all that chemistry knowledge. Um, I could model what was going on in the mitochondria with the glucose. I knew all of the steps, and they were in textbooks. Um,
So do you feel like this diagnosis was handed to you for a purpose? Was that why divinity was kind of the next step of study for you because it felt divine?
mm, no, because I was bitter. I was questioning it a lot.
Sure.
But let me tell you, up to that point, I was independently wealthy.
Yeah.
I could go anywhere in the world I wanted to go. I had two airplanes. I flew
Hmm.
airplanes myself. And all of a sudden it didn't matter.
Right.
It ended. And then just to tell you how narcissistic I was, I had two options. I could either give the millions of dollars of my asset to my children, or I could spend it and try to save my own life. And at the time, it looked to be a very selfish, narcissistic approach. And I spent about 1.2 million in research trying to figure out. I wouldn't trust anyone else
Yeah.
with it. No pharmacy. I had universities wanting to help. I denied their help. I spent my own money, did my own research, and figured all this out.
What was the purpose behind not accepting help? You
I
didn't
didn't
want
want any
anybody
bias.
else in
I
control with it?
didn't know. I'd already been through business partners who were pretty good at whenever money's involved,
Mm,
the backstabbing gets
sure.
very ugly.
Hmm.
And I didn't want to deal with that. I wanted to deal because I was dying. If I didn't figure this out,
Hmm.
no one else was going to matter. No one cares when it really gets tough.
Right.
Um, so I did it as a journey. I sort of looked at I died,
Hmm.
and this is all a gift. This every day goes on. Every day is a gift.
Wow.
And uh, now I've written two books. The first one, and they're both on Amazon. One of them is How to Live Your Life Fearlessly: The Journey of a Stoic Christian. That came after that, but I had kept a journal for 40 about 40 years, 38 years. And I wrote down every time I met somebody, what did I learn from that person every day for 40 years?
Wow.
And I met probably 3,000 people and little proverbs, things that I learned from that person. And it was a journal that I kept. Well, then I had a mother come to me. Her son was involved in drugs, and I had a son that was involved in drugs. And what did I do to get through that period? So I let her read my journal, and she's probably the only person that had read it. But
Hmm.
um, she came back and she said, "You need to publish this." She said, "There's a lot of people out there that need to hear this." And I went, "No." I said, "I every time I read it, it brings me back to a specific point in my life, a memory, and not all of them were good."
Right.
And she said, "No." She said, "I can get this published." I said, "Okay." So she contacted the publisher at Amazon, and I sent the manuscript to them, and they published it.
Wow.
And so that's there. And then in November of last year, a good friend of mine who works at the Pentagon, he said, "Now, Sam, I'm going to send you 3,300 documents. These are classified documents." And I told him, I said, "I no longer have a clearance. I can't receive classified documents." He said, "No." He said, "I need you to review these. These are all non-published on the JFK assassination.
Which were just recently released, correct? Or these are the non-published parts of them.
These were the non-published ones.
Okay.
And they were declassified on January 24th
Yeah.
of 2025. But I got these in November of 2024. Freaked me out. I even had possession of them. So I
Yeah.
reviewed those all through November, December, and then in those documents, it explains exactly why and who killed John F. Kennedy.
Hmm.
So I wrote a book and compiled everything when Trump declassified that in January 24th. In February 1st, I published it on Amazon.
Wow.
So you can go on, and it's called JFK, a forensic report. Easy to read. It names who killed him, why he was killed, all the people that were involved, what the trajectory, where the bullets came from. Um, Oswald never fired a shot. He was in the
Shocker.
lunchroom when Kennedy was assassinated, but
Shocker.
he was involved. He set the sniper's nest up in the book depository building.
So let me ask you this then. So you obviously have some pretty impressive connections. Why can't we get over the hump then with the research? And have it more. I mean, I know the astaxanthin it's ValAsta, right? Your
Mhm.
company.
Ours is
Um,
a glucosidic astaxanthin,
okay.
and
So
all
it's
that does is increase the absorption of the astaxanthin into the cells.
sure. So your research, why is it not more publicly available? Why can't we get over kind of that hump of, I mean, this is wild.
We've got several doctors who are taking it. I got
Mhm.
several politicians taking it,
Mhm.
but I did no sales or marketing
Right.
because I'm 73 years old. I didn't want to get into it
It's a lot of work.
because some very powerful people are going to refer to it as snake oil, just like that doctor at John Hopkins did.
Sure.
And I just didn't need that in my life. And haters are going to hate, but you got to understand there was a financial motivation for shutting this down because
Right.
if all of a sudden this and the VLED device comes out and these diseases go away, the medical industry is done.
Yeah.
Pharmaceutical companies are done,
Hmm.
and they know it now, but
Right.
they can't stop it. We're in 27 different countries. So, how did we get into those countries?
Without marketing and all of that.
We that is when people got cured of cancer, they told another 100 people, and
Sure.
those 100 people told 100 people, and it went completely around the world. We have offices in Singapore, Australia, Dubai, Europe, Denmark, Canada, Mexico, um, let's see, Malaysia, um, with no sales and no marketing,
Yeah.
just by word of mouth. So that tells me that this is like for real. These
Yeah.
people wouldn't still be alive. I, I had an oncologist from Wheeling, West Virginia, called me, and she said, "Mr. Shepard," she says, "I have 8 stage 4 cancer cases. They're home with hospice, and there's nothing else we can do for them." And she says, "All 8 have come in, and we can't find any cancer in them, and they don't know each other. They're not family members or anything like that. There's just
Hmm.
separate patients." And she says, "All 8 are now cancer free." And they were given 2 to 4 months, 3 to 6 months to live. And she said when she interrogated them as to what they were taking, every one of them mentioned Velasta. And she said, "I don't know what that is." And so I explained it to her. And I showed her the videos, I showed her the chemistry. And she said, "I've got another reason for calling you." She said, "My husband was just diagnosed with stage 4 prostate cancer."
Mm.
And I said, "Trish," I said, "you're an oncologist. You can do seeds, you can do surgery, you can do chemo, you can do radiation." And her comment to me rattled me. She said, "Nobody in my family is doing chemo or radiation,"
Yeah.
but she will prescribe it
Yeah.
to other people. And it's because that protocol is set up. The CDC and the FDA all have their protocol that generates income for the pharmaceutical companies.
Right.
And the insurance companies are involved because they don't mind paying out to the maximum amount that they can because insurance companies make their money from premiums, but they're somewhat regulated. They can't raise their premiums unless their outflow of cash hits a certain level. They're guaranteed a return on their capital. So they like spending more money because then it allows them to raise premiums for their insurance, and that's where they make the money. So they're in bed with the pharmaceutical companies.
It's
Um,
unfortunate. It's such an
the
unfortunate
health,
system.
yeah, the health care program is bad news, and they're doing it for economics.
Yeah.
Chemo, 87% of all people that take chemo end up with another form of cancer within 5 years,
Hmm.
probably caused by the chemo, because the chemo generates those free radicals.
Yeah, it
It's
was
just
interesting. My husband's father, uh, died of colon cancer. Um, metastasized to the liver. Very, very, very rapid decline after chemo. Very. I mean, it was rapid. Yeah. And I think it made us question everything. I mean, at that point, you know, we were dealing with other health related, my health related issues, which was not cancer related. So kind of knew nothing about that world, and it was very eye opening, that whole experience for sure.
Anybody who's been through that and the trauma of just getting a cancer diagnosis
Hmm.
is, whether it's terminal or not, you run through the same feelings that it's terminal.
Right.
Melanoma, for example, we have a very good track record on melanoma, and and we can stop it. Um, Everyone thought that the largest group that gets melanoma are marathon runners. And we thought it was because for the longest time it was UV exposure to sunlight when
Hmm.
they're out running and all that. Turns out it's not. What it is that when you go anaerobic in your exercise, anytime you go anaerobic, your mitochondria generates a huge amount of these free radicals.
Yeah.
So the way it happens in marathon runners is their capillaries on their skin begin to shut down to pump blood into the muscles and into the organs and into the brain. Well, that creates a low oxygen, a hypoxic level in the skin. That hypoxic level causes your cells to go anaerobic, which increases the statistical probability of disrupting the DNA and forming melanoma.
Hmm.
So that's one. The other one is on inflammatory breast cancer. One of the classic treatments is to go on estrogen blocking chemicals. Well, what we found is that you have estrogen plus the hydroxyl free radical yields hydroxyestradiol. Hydroxyestradiol is a known carcinogen.
Yeah.
So how does the pharmaceutical world deal with that? They say, let's take the estrogen out. Well, every woman is going to be producing estrogen. You can't take it to zero.
Right.
Okay, our push is, this is why young women don't get cancer, but our point is take out the hydroxyl and you can maintain your estrogen. Same with testosterone. Testosterone plus the hydroxyl free radical forms hydroxytestosterone. Hydroxytestosterone is a known carcinogen. That's what's
Mm.
giving people prostate cancer. So if I remove the hydroxyl, this reaction never happens and nobody gets prostate cancer.
Yeah.
So men who are controlling, whether through glutathione production, catalase, superoxide dismutase, genetically they may be producing enough of those antioxidants. Not everybody gets prostate cancer.
Right.
Not everybody gets HER2 positive inflammatory breast cancers.
Right.
Um, but it's that hydroxyl free radical. That's what we were able to figure out causes these diseases. Um, Parkinson's.
Mm-hmm.
When we looked at Parkinson's, for the longest time, we thought that Parkinson's was due to a lack of dopamine being produced in the substantia nigra part of the brain. Now it turns out that's not true. What we find is that the dopamine to the hydroxydopamine level, that ratio is very low, which means the hydroxydopamine level is very high in these people with Parkinson's. Well, hydroxydopamine is what we give to animals to give them Parkinson's. So we can test Parkinson's medications on them. So here we have dopamine reacting with the hydroxyl free radical to form hydroxydopamine. And what do? They give people levodopa. They try to increase the dopamine part of the reaction, but pretty soon you get resistant because you start producing more and more of the hydroxyl free radicals,
Mm-hmm.
which causes severe Parkinson's and death. We've got it completely wrong.
Right.
And
Well, that's
um,
obvious. I mean, that's very obvious because nothing, we're not getting healthier. As a population, we are not getting healthier. So obviously, what we're doing is not working per se.
nope, nope. And it's all oxidative stress.
Okay.
It's all what's called ROS, reactive oxygen species.
Okay.
And this is textbook. This is, you don't need to go in to do a clinical study.
Hmm.
Every doctor is taught this in their biochemistry courses, and in their chemistry courses. When they study pathways in medical school, ROS is in every one of those equations.
Right.
So they know that that is the inflammatory starting point. And the nice thing about ValAsta is it neutralizes those ROS.
Yeah.
Um, I'm
So let's
70.
talk about Velasta just a little bit as far as how people take it then. Is it preventative? Is it,
Yeah,
what are
there's a
we looking
couple
at here?
things. Um, the first thing that we ask people to do is go and make your doctor works for you.
Hmm.
You don't work for your doctor. Go to your doctor and make him run the HSCRP. He'll ask you, how do you know about that test? You just tell him, I want to know my inflammatory disease
Sam
state.
Shepard told me.
What? No, you don't have to say that, but but you make sure that they include that on your blood work.
Okay.
If that number is under 3 milligrams per liter, then you're in pretty good shape. You're not going to generate a disease at that level. That's
Hmm.
normal inflammation levels. And that's how cells communicate, by the way.
Right.
If you're over 3 milligrams per liter, you are going to get a disease. It's just a matter, is it going to happen tomorrow or is it going to happen over the next 5 years?
Hmm.
Cancer starts 5 to 15 years before it actually presents.
Gotcha.
So that's why epidemiologically we can't go back and find the cause of cancer from an environmental, from the root level of that tree. It's hard to find it.
To pinpoint. Hmm.
Yep. But when we operate in the trunk level of that tree,
Hmm.
we can stop it at least and interrupt it.
Yeah.
Now, the Velasta is in an oil base. It's a glycosidic. It's the only patented astaxanthin or supplement that was ever allowed. We have a patent on it.
Hmm.
So it has a glucose attached to the astaxanthin. And when it gets into the small bowel, it readily gets absorbed. And glycosides, glucosidics are all part of organic chemistry. We used in bioweapons development, we used in synthesis. Pharmaceutical companies use it routinely. It's a standard organic method. The difference is the way they do it in the organic lab is typically with temperature. We can't apply temperature to the astaxanthin because we'll derate the activity of the astaxanthin. So I developed an electromagnetic high energy pulse that causes the OH of the astaxanthin and the OH of the sugar to vibrate at the same frequency where
Mm.
the oxygen reacts and the water molecule comes off. And that's what was patented. We're the only ones that can produce glucosidic astaxanthin. And
Wow.
we have two patents. That's the first one. The second one was in to help with Elon Musk and the Mars mission because
Hmm.
they had to have some way of combating radiation sickness from inflammatory diseases
Right.
caused by radiation. So this works great. And the way we found it was we had about 111 people that were on ValAsta and got radiation treatments for cancer. 100% did not get burns resulting from the radiation.
Hmm.
Every other case, without ValAsta being in their diet, they all got first or second degree burns.
Wow. Wow.
Um, so that really made me go back in. And what happens is the radiation splits the water H2O, so HOH,
Hmm.
splits that into a hydrogen ion and a hydroxyl free radical. That hydroxyl free radical is what causes the inflammation. The body pumps fluid in, blisters. The solution to pollution is dilution again.
Right. Right.
So when you have severe inflammation, whether it's in your lungs, that's called pneumonia,
Hmm.
or it's in a burn on your skin, your body pumps in fluid to try to dilute the inflammatory molecules away to your kidneys, try to get rid of them.
Right. Flush it out.
Yep. So, so those two patents cover pretty much and fall in line with exactly the chemistry and science that we
Yeah.
had figured out.
Wow. It's miraculous. I mean, it's amazing. I know you don't want to say it's divine intervention, but it kind of feels like that just from your kind
I'm
of
getting close. Well,
your
the
giving up
closest,
moment to taking this path. Would you have ever imagined?
it was not my career.
No.
And it would have taken a club to my head or a diagnosis of terminal disease to get me to switch what my career was.
Right.
And I was stubborn. I I I would never have done this. Now,
No.
one of the problems,
Well,
and
and
I tell people,
who wants to ask for that kind of trouble anyway? You know, I mean, it
yeah,
invited a lot of trouble into your life as well.
well, there's only two ways to change behavior.
Yeah.
There really is. It's either with pain and being uncomfortable, or you take money away from them.
Yeah.
Well, money was no longer my issue. Mine was health.
Yeah.
And I knew that's the only thing that mattered.
Right.
Everything else is secondary to your health. Because if you don't
Mhm.
have health, you're done. It's
Right.
over.
Right.
So I had reached that point, and I I I had a I did a seminar up in Toledo, Ohio, and preacher come up to me. He said, "This really sounds divine." I said, "Yeah, but at the time it wasn't. It
Right.
was, how can I save my life?" But looking back now, and the people that we meet, at a specific point in time, we went to Europe, and people's lives were changed. They had no other hope. But he asked me, he says, "When did you realize that this was probably not driven from human knowledge?" I said, "For 200 years, man has taken all of our treasury, all of our science, and trying to find a cure for cancer. And what do we end up with? These chemo protocols, radiation, and they don't." And I said, all of a sudden, I find it in the lowliest creature of God's creation, a single cell, slimy green algae.
Hmm.
And I said, there was a point when I looked at that under a microscope that I had to look out the corner of my eye and go, "How great art thou?" All of the knowledge of human beings couldn't do what that single creature provided.
Right.
So if you want to look at the power of God in creation, I that's it.
Yeah, I would say
We will
so.
never comprehend and are not capable of comprehending. All we can do, I had a Jewish rabbi call me malach. Malach is um, a messenger.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, we're all malachs. We're all messengers. We
Right.
all have a purpose. Finding that is what we call life.
Exactly. Exactly. I mean, what else is it for?
That's exactly right. We can go do, why am I churning around here? Why am I getting in my car and driving off?
Yeah.
Why does the sun shine? You start thinking about this, and this is all going to end.
Right.
As far as here, us being able to have this same conversation.
Right. Yeah.
But
It's
there's so
amazing.
there's so much yet to be explained. We haven't even touched the tip of creation.
No, I
So
think you're
that's
absolutely right. I mean, there's so much yet to be explored, so many questions yet to be answered. There's there's a lot, but I think what's happening is more and more and more and more people are kind of open to asking the questions, first of all, and exploring all the possibilities. And I think, just you reaching that point of, all right, I have no choice. I either find a new way or this is all over for me.
mhm.
I think anybody can understand that. Anybody, anybody. And I don't, I know you mentioned that coming out of kind of selfishness, but that's not what it ended up being,
Oh no,
especially
no, no,
being
no.
here and
And
spreading the message.
yeah, yeah. I've been. I've been sort of guided. You better look back at as to why I was not smart enough to know
Sure.
what was ahead.
Right.
But now that I have the ability to look back, I even have to go, oh my golly, look at this. I have the highest cure rate of any oncologist on the planet right now.
Right.
Cure rate. The title of our patent is a method for the process of using astaxanthin for the
Yeah.
treatment of inflammatory disease, particularly for the treatment of cancer. The FDA forbids us to use words like treatment, diagnose, cure.
Yeah.
Well, now I got two government agencies in conflict. The patent office requires I put the title on documents. The
Hmm.
FDA says you can't use that word treatment in your title.
So how do you deal with that? That's quite the
I list them
conflict.
both. I list them both and let the people choose.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So you're not technically in violation of
No, I'm not in violation. I'm under requirements to do both.
really.
Let
Wow.
the let let the agencies fight it out.
Right. Right.
Now the FDA may go back to patent office and try to revamp the title of my patent, but that's going to be a legal issue at that point
Sure.
because nobody can really touch a patent once it's examined and
Right.
granted.
And cleared. Sure. Sure. Wow.
But we'll
Well,
see. We'll see what happens.
what an amazing story. Truly, truly, and I'm so grateful that you came on to share it. And
Thanks.
I'm
Thanks
I'm
for
very
having me.
I'm very excited to be able to get this out there. And um, yeah, I'm in awe. I'm honestly kind of speechless, and that doesn't happen very often.
But when you see the NIH has now several thousand papers that
Yeah,
they've published, I think trying to prove me wrong, but they ended up proving me right. So
interesting.
one of the things that you can Google is NIH plus astaxanthin
Hmm.
plus whatever disease,
Okay.
cancer, arthritis, heart disease, Parkinson's, and all of the research papers that
Hmm.
the government did after my talk in April of 2019. They're all on there.
Hmm.
They're on our website. The technical information is all on our website. We have full-time nursing staff, free of charge, gives free consulting to anybody who's dealing with this
Yeah,
because the hope and despair component of these diseases is shattering. It's just,
absolutely.
it disrupts so many families and so many lives from a spiritual point of view, from a medical point of view, from an economic point of view. They're destroyed.
Right. Right.
So if there's a little bit of hope and a little bit of response, I've got one that comes to mind. He was an 82-year-old gentleman up in Oregon. He had 30% of all breast cancers are men, and
Interesting.
that's not a
Okay.
well-known fact. Well, he had inflammatory breast cancer,
Hmm.
and it had eaten out to the point you could look in through the hole and see his rib,
Oh, wow.
and and it had eaten completely out. And I got a picture of it, but he called me on the phone. They had given him 2 to 4 months to live,
Hmm.
and he called me on the phone, and I said, "You have nothing to lose." And he said, "Okay." So I just sent it to him. And I said, I want you to take this much orally, but I want you to topically put it on the wound. And um, he, in 42 days, he was cancer free. He lived for 3 years after that. He was estranged from his family, had never seen his grandchildren.
Hmm.
And so when you talk about why do things happen,
Yeah.
um, I don't try to explain it anymore. But um, he his family, because of his illness, they reconciled. And during one of his grandchildren's birthdays, they came out to see him. And he spent all day playing with them on Saturday,
Yeah.
worn out, went to bed, and they found him dead in his sleep Sunday morning.
Oh my goodness.
And
But only
he
after
was
he was able to reconcile with his family.
reconciled completely, and his grandkids got to see him. Let me see if I've got a
But he
picture.
didn't die of cancer, just
Cancer
old
free,
age. Wow.
cancer free. He had he probably had something from a coronary point of view.
Sure.
Some of
Sure.
these I'm not going to show you. Some of them are pretty gross, but
Mm.
his. Let's see if I can find it here now. Could have swore I had it here. Oh, here we go. That's
Oh my
that's
gracious.
and that's a mild one. I've got some
Hmm.
with women that it's the size of a pineapple. The tumor actually came out and fell
My
off.
goodness.
Now, after 45 days of being on astaxanthin, he was cured.
Oh my goodness. It looks like a
So
healed
when we,
burn.
yep, now he's going
Yeah,
to have some scarring.
sure.
It's like a wound. It's like a gunshot
I
wound.
mean, that was very open. Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
So I've got some in here where a lady had inflammatory breast cancer, a big knot underneath her armpit.
Hmm.
They wouldn't surgically remove it because the main nerve from her back down her arm was
Hmm.
infiltrated into the tumor. And the surgeon said, I'm not going to paralyze you. I have to cut that nerve to get that tumor out. No surgery. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You have 2 months. So we put her on astaxanthin, and she says, now, how will this come out? And I said, well, your skin will open up and it'll be like giving birth. I said, the tumor,
I'm sure that was a great visual for
oh
her.
yeah. I said that the tumor will come out and it'll fall off.
Yeah,
She was in disbelief.
sure.
And when it did come out, there was a lot of bleeding, a lot of blood behind it. Freaked her husband out. He thought she was bleeding to death.
Can't
got,
imagine.
got her wrapped in a towel and got her into the hospital. And by the time they got her to the hospital, the bleeding had stopped, but the blood had pocketed, and that's what was
Pushing it out.
pushing the tumor out.
Wow.
And so many stories. You'll see the testimonials on there, and I'm as
Yeah.
shocked as anyone else. From very, very few times in my life did I ever design something on a piece of paper and it actually worked perfectly. You
Right.
know, that just doesn't happen all that often.
Yeah.
This was one that was I was so focused and I had to be absolutely correct. There was no deviation from
No
it,
room for error.
no room for error.
Wow.
And it worked. It has superseded anything that I would have expected. I gave it to family members. I gave it to a young lady, Lori Cockrell, in Mississippi. She came down, had inflammatory breast cancer. She had tumors in her brain, tumors in her
Oh,
colon,
my goodness.
and she had they had given her 2 to 4 months. She had no eyebrows, no eyelashes, wore a bandana. It was her last party, and I went up to her and I hadn't seen her for a couple of years, and I said, "What's going on?" She said, "This is probably my last party. They've given me 4 months to live, and I'm in month two." And she says, the gentleman who we were having a party said that you're working on an anti-cancer medication. And I said, yeah, but I said, you're not supposed to know about it. And this is when I was sequestered at the Navy Yard in Charleston, and it was under tight security, and nobody was supposed to know. Well, he told her, so don't ever tell secrets to your friends. It'll eventually get out. So I said, I don't know what dose to give you. And she came up, put her hands on my cheeks, and she says, I've got 2 months left. She
It
said, how
doesn't
much can you
matter.
spare? Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And I said, well, I'm producing about 3,000 milligrams a day. She said, well, I'll do that. I said, Lori, I said, I don't know if it'll kill your liver. I don't. She said, what difference does it make? And she was reaching the same point,
Right.
the pinch point. So I looked at her and it became very clear I said, I tell you what, I'll send you 3,000 milligrams a day for the next 60 days. And so sent it to her. 33 days later, she's home with hospice.
Hmm.
Hospice calls MD Anderson and says she's not progressing. All of her pain has gone away, and we've stopped all morphine, and her strength is coming back. And MD Anderson was shocked. So they asked to see her. So she went back down to Houston, and he said, "You're here because we got to figure out a way to mitigate your pain." She said, "I'm not in pain."
Wow.
And he looked at her wound, her lesion, and it had healed over.
Hmm.
He said, "I don't know what's going on here." So he put her up on the table and he palpated into her gut, trying to feel for the tumors. And he couldn't find any. And he said, "I'm not sure what's going on here. It could be the way you're laying, but he said, I'm going to send you up for a PET scan." So she went up, PET scan. Here she was cancer free. Nothing in her brain, nothing in her colon. And MD Anderson was shocked. And they said, I told her not to tell MD Anderson that she was taking ValAsta. I didn't want him to know. And so she got in the car and she called me and she said, "Oh my golly," she said, "they can't find any cancer." And my concern was, okay, did you tell them what you're doing?
Right.
And she said, "No, but they asked me." She said, "Has anything changed in your diet?" And she said, "No." And they took a lot of blood samples. I said, "Well, they're going to try to check for a marker, and they're going to try to find in your bloodstream something that's different from your other blood work," because she had years of
Sure.
extensive
A
work.
massive amount, I'm sure.
Yeah. So I said, "Please don't tell them that you're taking this. Just get on with your life and go on." Because I really didn't want the headache, to be honest with you.
Hmm. Where were you in the research at this point? Was this pre-patent?
Uh, this was in 2013.
Okay. Okay.
So I had already started doing it on a small scale.
Okay.
I moved from Houston with um, some very well-heeled investors wanted to push this. So they got us involved at the Navy Yard in Charleston.
Okay. Okay.
So we're over there with these big reactors and we're making a lot of it.
Hmm.
So I ended up giving it to her and went through that. She's at home. The doctor calls with her blood work. And they said, "Your blood work looks normal. Your cancer markers are all normal." But they said, "We found this carotenoid in your bloodstream, and it's not in any of your other blood samples."
So they knew she wasn't being honest.
Well, yeah. So they said, "Have you changed something in your diet? What changed?" And she says, "I told him I couldn't tell him." I said, "You did what?" She said, "Yeah, I told him I can't tell you." They said, "Why don't you think about it and then call us back?" So she immediately got off the phone and called me, and
What do I
she said,
do?
"Yeah, they found something in my bloodstream." I said, "Did you tell them what you're doing?" She said, "No." She said, "I told them I couldn't tell them what I was doing." I said, "Oh no, they know
Yeah,
something is up."
exactly.
So
Exactly.
she called I said, she said, "You need to tell them this because this has such an impact on other cancer cases." And I said, "No, the timing's not right." Here I am again trying to interject.
Yeah,
So
well, sure.
um, I said, "I tell you what," I said, "if that pathologist calls you back, you give him my telephone number and I'll talk to him."
Yeah.
So about 3 days later, I get a phone call. He said, "Mr. Shepard," he said, "I understand we both have a patient." I said, "No, I don't have patients." He said, "Oh, so you're not a medical doctor?" I said, "Oh, no, I'm a research doctor." And they went, "Oh, so you're prescribing medication without a license." I
Gotcha.
said, "I tell you what," I said, "I know where this conversation's going." And I said, "I'm only going to ask you for three things. I need your name, your address, and your bank account number." he said, what do you need that for? I said, because I want to sue you for violating my right to do research. And I want to sue you for everything you have ever made and will ever make in your entire life.
Yeah.
And he went click, hung the
I
phone.
it's that's it's just fascinating to me why there was so much less curiosity on the mechanism of how this is working rather than, hey, you're prescribing without a medical license.
Yeah, yeah. Where's your focus? I
Right.
thought you're under the Hippocratic Oath were to help people.
Sure.
Here you are going to hurt people and hurt me.
Well, interestingly enough, too, I always find there's the right to try. Don't I, as a person who has nothing to lose at this point, I'm going to die. Don't I have a right to try anything that may
You do
work?
now. You,
Yes.
Trump put that in play in 2019,
Right. Right.
and now we do. But
Right.
think about it. Up until that point, we were at the mercy. We were working for the pharmaceutical industry.
Right. Right.
We were research guinea pigs for them
Fascinating.
to test their medications on.
Yeah. Yeah.
What a sad state of affairs, I got to tell
For
you.
sure. For sure. Wow. I mean, you've led a very interesting life.
I'm just old.
Does that ever like dawn on you? Like I have led a very interesting life.
It has. My wife and I have this discussion frequently, and when I
Yeah.
tell the story, I tell it in an hour or two. But keep in mind, there's 50 years
Right.
of stuff in between, and the
Sure.
hills and valleys were severe.
Mm-hmm.
But all of the little subsets, I I always had a curiosity. I couldn't figure out why things were the way they were my entire life.
Yeah.
I remember laying in a field on the playground at school, looking up at trees, and the leaves were all green. And I thought, that must be the favorite color because we just studied the rainbow, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Of all the colors, trees must really love green light. It turns out that's the light that it hates. Green light will kill a tree because a tree reflects, separates all of the wavelengths and reflects green light away from itself because it's a poison. It's
Yeah.
toxic. And I didn't find that out till later. And I can't just look at what's in front of me. I've got to look. It's like the Wizard of Oz. I got to see the wizard behind the curtain.
Mm-hmm.
It's not what it is, but what isn't it? And why isn't it? So my whole life, all through college, and it's probably what got me through it, I
Yeah.
could think in the negative. I could see the backside or both sides of things.
Mm-hmm.
Um, one classic example in differential equations, we had this massive equation. So you have the left side of the equation equals a whole bunch of crap over on the right side of the equation. And all of the students were trying to solve it with all the mathematical skills that they had.
Right.
Well, I wasn't that smart. So, and they were really struggling too. So I said, okay, I'm going to sit here in my room and I'm going to assume a number and plug it in to the left side of the equation and then plug it into the right side of the equation and see what the two are. So if I put it over on the left side and I got 3, I plug it over here, I get 15. Well, that's obviously not the right solution because they have to be equal.
Right, right.
So then I said, okay, let me go with 5. Let me plug in 5
Mm-hmm.
and I plug it in over here and I get an answer of 7. I plug 5 in here, I get 9.
You're
So
closer.
now it's
Yeah.
diverging. So
Yes.
I just trial and error and ended up with the answer. And one of those tests, one of those problems are on the latter part of one of the tests that we had to solve. And I did it by trial and error. And I did it
You had to think
probably,
outside of the box
yeah,
and
yeah,
it saved your life.
yep. And it
Yeah.
was the same thing there. I got so panicked
Yeah.
because I didn't have the mathematical skills to solve it with logarithms and
Hmm.
division and exponents and uh, how else what else can I do? If the both sides have to be equal, they have to be equal. So I can assume a number over here if it's not equal. And that was
Yeah.
my thought process. And a lot of these things people say, well, why didn't somebody else think of this? I don't know. I don't know. I
Because
said
we
I
like things to work neatly. We don't want to have to think outside of the box. We want to be told this is the way it works and we're going to plug it in that way and that's how it's going to work.
that's
And
exactly right. We're very good.
yeah,
Most people are very good in thinking in one dimension.
sure.
2 + 2 = 4.
Yeah.
But I always had the ability to look at multi derivatives of things and being able to solve, not just in the, I just did this. I'm working on what's called supercapacitors, and I don't want to get into a lot. That's a whole other podcast. But supercapacitors are aluminum plate separated by an insulating membrane with another aluminum plate. So in your mind, just sort of picture that
Mm-hmm.
sandwiched plate.
Later. Okay.
Okay, so that's called a capacitor. And what you do is you put a positive charge on the top plate and a negative charge on the bottom, and it'll hold that charge.
Mm-hmm.
These are going to replace lithium iron phosphate batteries.
Okay.
Elon Musk is in trouble. So,
Just warning you, Elon.
yeah. So these capacitors are the capacitance is proportional to the area of the plate
Mm-hmm.
divided by the distance between the plates. So the smaller I can make the distance, the more capacitance I have. The bigger I make the area, the more capacitance I have.
Mm-hmm.
So I developed a three-dimensional capacitor, which is 22 times more powerful than the current capacitor technology.
Wow.
So in military drones, where they're using lithium iron phosphate batteries to run the drones, that's about 40% of the weight. I now can do the same energy density on a piece on a battery that weighs 3 pounds,
Wow.
or about 3% of the total weight. Now you can put more cameras, you can put more armaments, weapons, whatever you want to put on
Because
that
it's
drone.
lighter.
It, and it can fly farther.
Sure.
So these and the polymer that I developed that fits in between these three-dimensional capacitors.
Mm-hmm.
So think of it as a cup nested inside of another cup. And I stack these.
Sure.
Now, if I have a column that's 8 foot tall, 3 or 4 inches in diameter with these nested capacitors,
Mm-hmm.
you have it at your house, you lose power. That one column of capacitors will run your house for 3 days. That's a
Impressive.
game changer.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Now,
it
now if
is.
we can build it, and they never wear out. A battery can be charged about 3,000 charges. We're up over 120,000 charges, and we lose no
Wow.
efficiency.
It's amazing to me how you're not done. You know what I
I
mean?
guess not. Yeah.
You just keep working. You're not done. I'm amazed. I'm amazed. And I'm grateful for your stories and for your honesty, your lack of fear, um, all of that. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your stories today.
Thanks, Brandy, for having me. And I hope it helps a bunch of people.
I do too. I do too. Thanks, Sam.
Thank you very much.